There's a rule in business: the bigger you are, the harder you fall. Think Blockbuster, MySpace, and Kodak, giants that once ruled their industries, crushed by newer, faster, and smarter challenges they never saw coming, or refused to acknowledge. It always starts the same way. They dominate for years, build a massive customer base, rake in profits like clockwork, and then, almost overnight, everything changes. Technology shifts, the culture moves on, the disruptors arrive, and before they know it, they're scrambling to catch up to a game they thought they were winning. But every now and then, one of these old titans does something unexpected. It stops acting like a dinosaur and starts moving like a startup. It sheds the ego, takes the hit, and reinvents itself right in the middle of the storm. In the mid-2000s, Foxtel sat comfortably at the top of Australia's pay TV industry. It had the live sport Australians couldn't go without, the international dramas that gave it prestige, and exclusive licensing deals that kept any real competition at bay. It wasn't cheap, but it was dependable, and for millions of households, it was the default. For years, that dominance seemed untouchable. But when streaming entered the picture, everything started to shift. Viewers changed their habits almost overnight. Netflix arrived, Stan gained traction, and the idea of paying for a bulky cable bundle began to feel outdated. As the new players surged, Foxtel's subscriber base began to shrink, its revenue dipped, and its once monolithic status started to crack. But to understand Foxtel's full story, we have to talk about its beginnings. Foxtel was launched in 1995 as a joint venture between News Corp and Telstra, and it had built itself into a media powerhouse by riding the wave of cable television as it swept through Australia. The pitch was simple: premium content at a premium price. If you wanted live sport, international drama, or blockbuster films, Foxtel was the gatekeeper. It locked down long-term contracts with both the NRL and the AFL, as well as cricket broadcasters. It had HBO and those big movies before streaming existed. But what it didn't have, at least not yet, was any serious reason to evolve. For a long time, Foxtel didn't need to change. With minimal competition and sluggish internet across much of the country, its position at the top went largely unchallenged. Streaming, if anyone even mentioned it, felt like a niche concept from overseas. Even when Netflix officially launched in Australia in 2015, Foxtel gave little indication it was concerned. But the cracks were already starting to show. Audiences were shifting and expectations started to rise. Eventually, the old model of locking customers into long-term contracts filled with channels they didn't use started to wear thin. People wanted choice, flexibility, and better value, and they were finding it elsewhere. The era of bundled cable was beginning to fall apart. Streaming adoption in Australia exploded. Within 2 years of launching, Netflix passed 2 million subscribers. By 2020, over 77% of households had at least one streaming service. Foxtel, built on satellites, set-top boxes, and call centers, suddenly looked like a relic from a different era. Subscriber numbers fell, revenue shrank, and the cost of maintaining its legacy systems made it harder to compete with newer, leaner platforms that were delivering more for less. But this isn't a story about Foxtel falling behind and failing. It's about how it adapted and overcame. Foxtel's response wasn't immediate, but when it finally moved, it did so with intent. The first real shift came in 2018 with the launch of Kayo Sports, a standalone streaming service built specifically for Australia's sports-obsessed audience. Rather than forcing viewers back into traditional cable bundles, Kayo stripped things down to exactly what fans wanted: live and on-demand sport without the excess. It wasn't a basic stream either. The platform introduced features like split-screen viewing, interactive stats, and a sleek, mobile-friendly interface that felt built for the moment. For the first time, Foxtel was speaking the language of streaming, and they are doing it well. Then came Binge in 2020. It was Foxtel's answer to Netflix and Stan, a straightforward, affordable streaming service focused on drama, comedy, and premium series. Thanks to Foxtel's long-standing licensing deals, Binge launched with a killer lineup: Game of Thrones, Succession, The Sopranos, Chernobyl, and more. It wasn't trying to out-tech Netflix, and it wasn't drowning in original content. But it was familiar, accessible, and surprisingly solid, and that was enough to win back market share. What Foxtel understood better than its rivals was that streaming didn't have to replace cable overnight. it could be complementary. Some people still wanted the traditional Foxtel box, others didn't. So instead of killing one to save the other, they built a hybrid ecosystem, a model that allows you to choose. Keep your satellite box if you want it, or ditch it for Kayo and Binge. Either way, you're still in the Foxtel funnel. Internally, the company was changing too. It began overhauling its tech stack and improving its user interface, all while phasing out its worst legacy systems. It improved its mobile apps, expanded smart TV compatibility, and integrated with Chromecast and Apple TV. In short, it stopped treating digital like an add-on and started treating it like the future. But the real power move was that Foxtel never lost its grip on live sport. While streaming giants spent billions chasing global rights deals, Foxtel played the long game at home. It inked long-term contracts with the NRL and the AFL, locking in broadcast rights through 2027 and beyond. It also secured cricket, held onto the UFC and motorsport, as well as key American leagues like the NFL and the NBA. This meant that people needed Foxtel to watch these leagues, keeping them in the Foxtel ecosystem. On the business side, things were also shifting. News Corp used its weight to renegotiate licensing deals, consolidate its media holdings, and bring Foxtel's costs down. Meanwhile, Telstra, once a 50% stakeholder, reduced its position, giving Foxtel more independence and flexibility. Leadership under CEO Patrick Delaney helped steer the company toward innovation without blowing up the brand. The message was clear. Foxtel wasn't trying to be cool, it was trying to be useful. By 2023, the results were finally catching up to the strategy. Kayo had grown to over 1.3 million subscribers, while Binge was approaching 1.5 million, and even traditional Foxtel had started to stabilize after years of decline. The company reported over 4.6 million total subscribers across its platforms. Streaming revenue was rising, and perhaps most importantly, the business was turning a profit. At a time when global streaming giants were still burning cash to chase growth, Foxtel had quietly built a model that actually made money. Foxtel clawed its way back by playing to its strengths, locking in key sports rights, holding onto valuable content partnerships, and making smarter use of the infrastructure it already had. While others raced to be the next Netflix, they stayed in its lane and made it profitable. That said, the road ahead is still tricky. Streaming fatigue is setting in, and audiences are becoming more selective about where they spend both their time and money. Global players like Amazon Prime and Paramount Plus are continuing to grow their presence in Australia, while platforms like YouTube and TikTok are pulling attention in entirely different directions. For Foxtel, the challenge now is staying relevant without stretching itself too thin. That means keeping its technology up to date, its content lineup competitive, and its pricing strategy sharp enough to stay in the fight. There's also the question of what happens when HBO's deal expires. If Warner Brothers Discovery decides to bring Max to Australia, Binge could lose its biggest drawcard. But unlike in the past, the company isn't leaning on a single pillar anymore. Between Kayo, Binge, and the smaller Flash service, Foxtel now operates more like a diversified portfolio than a one-size-fits-all platform, giving it options if one part of the business takes a hit. Foxtel may not be the cultural juggernaut it once was, but it's still here, reshaped, retooled, and holding its ground in a very different world. For those who grew up with it, flipping through channels after school or watching weekend footy with the family, it's an iconic piece of Australian living rooms. But what do you think? What's your earliest memory of Foxtel? Was it sports, movies, or something completely unexpected? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like, hit subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss any more deep dives like this. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, stay curious.